I was going to say Sunday, but this is absolutely not Sunday. This is Friday all day, right? Okay. I've got it now. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm glad that you could be here. And we are going to make something absolutely delicious today. We are going to make a new recipe that I've been playing with. It is chicken lime carne macinata. So carne macinata means ground meat in Italian. So there you go. That's where I get my name for this dish. And it is going to be wonderful and creamy, and it's made with whole ingredients. Now we have done oh my goodness, we've done Alfredo sauce on the show before, and we're not going to do Alfredo sauce today because we've done that, but we are going to make something that is going to be wonderful and summery and have some nice light taste to go along with the creamy taste. And so the first thing that we are going to do here is we are going to, that's a big clove. You know, I think we're just going to stick with one clove of garlic. Now, if you remember, I've told you guys a few times, if you really want to make your clove of garlic ground up, pressed out, you can do that with a little bit of salt. But we do not want to do that today because that makes the garlic flavor too intense, and we want the lime to shine through. So we are just going to mince this up pretty well, but we're not going to puree it. And we are going to add it to 1 pound of chicken, or 454 grams, thereabouts. Okay, so there we've got our garlic done. And we are going to add 1 big clove or 2 small cloves of garlic. I really recommend that you use fresh garlic in this because it just gives a nicer, brighter taste. And because we're doing keto, we want to keep things whole as much as we can. So we have 1 pound of chicken. We have 1 large garlic clove minced up, and to that we are going to add 65 grams of Parmesan cheese, and we're going to add 80 grams of it looks like breadcrumbs. I know it does, but it's not. This is ground pork rinds, and I buy my pork rinds typically at Costco, because you can get huge big containers of them at a really reasonable price, and you just throw them in your food processor and grind them up, and they work great for breadcrumbs. So that's what we're using today. So we've got garlic, chicken, we've got our pork rinds. Instead of breadcrumbs, we're going to add about 1/4 cup of parsley, and a little bit of salt and pepper. Go light on the salt if you're using pork rinds. Pork rinds have quite a lot of salt on them, so you want to go light on the pork rinds. Now, if you guys have been hanging out with me here for any amount of time, you know just exactly how I feel about touching raw meat. So for that reason, as always, I have my vinyl gloves. Good morning, Evelyn. Okay, so 1 pound of chicken, 65 grams of Parmesan cheese, 80 grams of ground pork rinds, and we're going to add 1 egg. We've got our minced clove of garlic in there and our Parmesan cheese, and we just add our egg in there, and a little bit of pepper. Now, if you don't want to use black pepper, and I'm going to put about a teaspoon of pepper in there. If if you don't want black pepper, especially if you're making a sauce and you don't want the black flecks in your sauce, just use oh, look at me spilling it all over the place. I should have used a bigger bowl. Use white pepper. And you can get black pepper, white pepper, whatever kind of pepper you like from TSL Organics. And I know I keep telling you guys I'm going to do this. Now, look at me. I've started mixing this up and I haven't started heating up my pan. So we're just going to fix that right now. Now you don't want your pan very high. We want these chicken meatballs to brown nicely so that they look beautiful, and you have that caramelization on the the chicken meatballs that gives them a really beautiful deep flavor. Without, now my goodness, I am just making a heck of a mess. I think maybe we need a bowl just one size bigger. What do you think? So one size bigger it is. Now we'll clean up our mess a little bit maybe. So chicken and lemon is a lot more common in Greek cooking, and you get lemon or lime in there we get all our, there we go. This is making a little more sense. Should have thought of that before I put the stuff in that other bowl. I'm going to have to get some more gloves that are a size smaller because these are just a little bit too big for me and they are not staying on my hands very well. So do you have a big steaming cup of coffee with you this morning? I certainly hope so. Now, as usual, I have my magnetic induction burner going here only because my kitchen is not arranged well enough that we could hang out at my stove, maybe one day, because as you know, my stove is magnetic induction as well. Now I have to make meatballs out of these. Make your meatballs small. The smaller they are, I mean, you can always make lots, but the smaller your meatballs are, the more quickly they're going to cook. And when you're doing something that you want to be a quick meal, that's kind of important. So we're just going to make them about an inch around is about good. Now remember, when you are tweaking this recipe for you and your family, you want to make sure that if you're adding any extra ingredients, or if you're adding this recipe to a carb manager that you're using, that you add any extra ingredients that you have in there, because even if it's half a teaspoon of pepper, that could affect the carb load in here, and we want to make sure that we know exactly what it is that we're getting. Okay, now this part of it can take a little while. That's getting a little bit big. That always seems to happen. I start out really well and I have nice uniform little meatballs, and as I go they get bigger and bigger. I think maybe that's a sign my brain is telling me that this is getting boring. I don't know, but it certainly is not boring when you eat it. It is absolutely delicious. So we are just going to make a few more of these. And when we put them in the pan, I'm going to put them in with a little bit of bacon grease, because that's going to add just that little bit of extra flavor. Okay, now we'll get a few more of these done. So this morning I do have my cup of coffee here, as you can likely see, and I have buttered rum flavoring in it, and I just had a nice chat with my youngest daughter, whose birthday is today. Now, she is 37 today. So, you know that makes me older than 37. Although, when my birthday comes around in September, I will be the same age this year as I was last year. $29.95 plus shipping and handling. The shipping and handling seems to go up a little bit every year, but the $29.95 doesn't. Just gonna stay there. Okay, so these are coming along beautifully, and that pan is getting nice and hot. Now we're not going to cook these meatballs all the way through right when we put them in the pan, because we want them to finish cooking out so that any juices that are coming out of these meatballs are going to come out of the meatballs right into the lime cream sauce that we're going to make for them to go in. Okay, so we'll do this many to start with. Just put my gloves right here so I can use them in a moment. Get my bacon fat out. You know, when you are cooking bacon, make sure you're saving the bacon fat or pancetta. Now you can see that this pan is smoking hot, and that's exactly what we want. Now I am just going to keep making meatballs and dropping them in there, and I'm going to turn this down. I want these brown, but I really do not want to set off the smoke alarm again, because I know we've done that together. We have. I'll own it. So I've got that turned down to 3 now. And we'll just keep popping meatballs in there. The fuller your pan is, the less likely you're going to have it burn. So 37. Oh, good morning, Jody. Now, if you guys are looking at the messages, you'll see that Jody Zahn Williams just popped in, and that is my baby girl, who is 37 today. So happy birthday, Jode. So we'll get to talk a little bit more after I'm done here. Okay. Good morning, Del. You know, I love that my husband has a job that allows him most mornings to be able to pop in here and hang out with us. Now I can smell that these are starting to caramelize already. So we're just going to grab a set of tongs and start flipping these over. Now, you will be able to see how beautiful and brown these are getting. We're probably going to have to add some more bacon grease. Pardon me. Now the bacon grease stops them a little bit from sticking. If your meat is browned properly, if you've got that perfect caramelization on it, your meat will release from the pan. If you go to flip a chicken meatball or a hamburger or whatever kind of ground meat, or not ground meat, the same holds true for steak. If it's stuck to the pan, one of 2 things is true. Either you didn't have enough oil in the pan to begin with, or it's not done cooking on that side enough to release it. Now these are releasing beautifully, so I know that they are just right. And look at how beautiful they are. I'm going to set this aside, and I will do another pan of meatballs later. Okay, so we're going to let these brown on all sides, and I'm just going to set this out of the way. So we're going to let these brown on all sides, and then we're going to take them out of the pan, and we're going to deglaze the pan with our cream and lime juice, and we're going to make our sauce that makes the lemon chicken carne masata. Macinata. I'm speaking Spanish and very poorly. And you know what, Jody? I would love to do that. Maybe one of these days we'll have to have me come and do this down at your house. Or if you have no other plans on your birthday, you could always come up here and check these out. Okay. Yep, I definitely have made a mess. There is no doubt about it. Now, these are just ready to be flipped again, so we'll do that. Now, if you have time, juice fresh limes or lemons, if whatever citrus you're using, make it fresh because it adds so much to the flavor. If you don't have time to do it fresh right that second, you can always do some ahead. I like to have a jar of fresh lime juice and fresh lemon juice in my fridge because I use it for lots of stuff. And it is absolutely delicious. Now, as these brown, they get kind of weird shaped. And it makes it a little bit tougher to make them stick on a side that isn't brown, but it's all good. Okay, so we're going to let those go for a minute more. And while we're doing that, we're going to get our ingredients ready for the sauce. Now, one of the things that we need for the sauce is a little bit of olive oil. Even though this is a cream sauce, yeah, we're going to use a little bit of olive oil as well. And look at, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but on the bottom of this pan there are little crispy bits from the chicken that are stuck to the pan, and those are going to be absolutely delicious in our sauce. So we're going to make sure that all of those get incorporated as well. Now, some of these meatballs that are a little bit bigger, I think I'm going to set in the middle so they're going to cook a little faster. Now, this is the big reason why you want to make sure that your meatballs are a uniform size, because I can see that my little ones are browning and they're getting firmer. You can tell by the feel of them if they're cooked, and they get firm when they are. So the proteins change shape and elasticity. Okay, now these are almost where we want them, and so when they're done, we're just going to set those in a bowl. And we're going to get going to have our ingredients all ready because we don't want this pan to get too hot or it's going to start smoking again. And we're going to add a little bit more bacon fat to this. Now, the bacon fat and the olive oil, and I have one camera that is just kind of a little bit wonky today. It's not letting me stay right where I want to be. The bacon fat and the olive oil are going to work well together, so you don't need to worry about using two different types of oil because that isn't an issue. Now, if you have fresh parsley when you're making these, use your fresh parsley. And if you have a bunch and you're not using all of it, don't worry about it. Chop it up and lay it out on some parchment paper on a pan sheet of some kind and let it dry and then put it away, because it's wonderful when it gets rehydrated. So you don't have to let it go to waste. The same is true with any fresh herbs that you buy. Don't let them go to waste. Okay, now this is about where we want them. You can see how beautifully brown these are. So, whoops. Okay. That one's just going to sit up there. I need to make sure that my little hound dog does not get those. Chicken is not a dog's friend typically, especially not mine. It hasn't been very friendly to them. So my little dog that I have now, Piglet, his dad was very allergic to chicken. So that was not something that we could feed him. Okay, now, first thing we're going to add is about 3/4 of a cup of water. That 3/4 of a cup of water is going to just start to deglaze this pan so that we get all of the wonderful little crispy bits off the bottom. That's going to give our lime sauce wonderful flavor. And we are going to add to that a tablespoon of olive oil. We are just mixing things up here today because, as well as the tablespoon of olive oil, there, we're going to add about 45 grams of butter. Now you know that when it comes to ingredients, you want to weigh them. And you can say it's a tablespoon or it's 2 tablespoons or whatever. But now the easiest way to do this is we're just going to set the butter dish on the scale and zero the scale. And when we take a piece off, it's minus 27. So we know that's 27 grams of butter. And we need 45. So we're going to do a little bit more. That's 46. That's close enough. I'm happy with that. Okay, now this can just go right back where it belongs. And we'll give this a wipe. Okay, so we've got olive oil, butter. Now, in a lot of sauces, they'll call for some kind of thickener. And you can use xanthan gum to thicken it if you really want to. I'm not going to today, and the reason that I'm not going to is because every time you add an extra ingredient, it's something that you have to pay attention to the carb load from it, first of all, but you have to ask yourself if you really need it. Now, if you're making a gravy and you really want that gravy to be nice and thick, then just finish emptying out that olive oil, then you may want to do that. But in this case, we're going to be adding Parmesan cheese to this, so we don't need to worry about adding any other thickener because the Parmesan cheese is really going to do a beautiful job for us. So we get this going. That butter is almost melted. Oh, we really need to work. Somebody needs to work on that webcam that lets you smell what's going on here because it smells amazing. Now we have 1 cup of heavy cream, and I'm going to put that in there right now. And then I'm going to turn the heat down. Now, anytime you're working with cream, you want to make sure that you're working at a low heat. Having it boil to begin with is fine, but you want to keep that heat low because you don't want this to scald. So I'm just going to, we'll turn it to 2 and see what happens next. Pardon me. And then we are going to add 1/3 of a cup of fresh lime juice. So a little bit more. How limey do you like it? Do you like the lime flavor really strong? I really do like it very strong. So if there was even 1/2 cup in there, that would be just fine. I don't have an issue with that at all. And then we are going to add, if I can find it, our Parmesan cheese, which I do not have out. I added some in the meatballs, and I did not add it. I didn't have it out for this. So we are just going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese to the mix. So we want about 1/2 cup. Now I know this looks like a powdered cheese. I guess it is, but it is fresh Parmesan that is just ground down like this, and that makes it wonderful to use for sauces. But it is fresh Parmesan cheese. You don't want the stuff that's shelf stable. The only way that something like this is shelf stable is if it has a lot of ingredients in it that we really don't want to be eating Okay. Now we're going to stir this in, and we're going to cook this down just a wee bit. And when it gets nice and hot, we're going to put the meatballs back in, and we're going to let the meatballs cook in there too. And I'm definitely making a mess on my counter. Now, as this cooks down with the parm in it, it is going to thicken this up, and it will be beautiful. Now, one last ingredient that is very important is about 1.5 tablespoons of lime zest, because that's really going to brighten up that lime flavor as well. It doesn't have the sour, but it has the lime. And so you get that in there. You can also, if you have extra lime zest, you can add some right to the chicken meatballs as well if you like. Now this is dehydrated lime zest from limes that I did a while ago. I think you were with me when I did some of them. So that's gone in there, and we're just going to wait for this to heat up a little bit more and clean up a little bit more of my mess while we're doing that. There we go. Now, while that is heating up, I am going to enjoy a little bit of this coffee with my buttered rum sugar-free syrup in it. That is absolutely true. You cannot use too much lime. I don't think that's possible. Now, okay, so we have that done. This is heating up really nicely. So we're going to put these meatballs back in here. Don't dump them in, place them in, because if you dump them, you're going to end up with your sauce all over the place. And don't season your sauce until after you get the meatballs cooking in here, because these meatballs are also going to add a little bit of seasoning to your sauce. You can always add more salt. You can't take it out once it's in there. Okay. Now we actually have a bowl that I can put all my messy stuff in. And we are just going to keep these cooking down in here. Now, at this point, if this was going to be put over any kind of pasta, you would want to start cooking your pasta. But because we're keto, we're not going to be using spaghetti, or, well, we are going to be using spaghetti, just not the traditional kind that we typically use. Now, you can find this in a lot of places. These are konjac noodles. I will show you. Now, these can be found at London Drugs in Canada. If you Google them, if you have, there's an app that you can get for your phone called Flip. And you can look on Flip and you can find them, I'm sure. Okay, so the outside of the package, and there are a lot of different kinds. You can find konjac rice. Now, this is made out of konjac flour, and konjac flour absolutely is keto. Now, if you watch The Good Doctor, and I had somebody approach me about this, they said, oh, I saw this thing on The Good Doctor that said that konjac has been banned in Australia. Well, that's true, but you know, it takes one silly person to do something that doesn't make a lot of sense, and it causes problems for everybody. So what happened in Australia was some woman decided she wanted to lose weight, and she knew that these were low carb and low calorie, so all she ate was konjac noodles. Lots of konjac noodles. Well, anytime you're eating something like this that's made out of any kind of flour, it can definitely cause constipation, and it got to a point with her where it was really dangerous. So because of that one incident, they banned konjac noodles, but only in Australia. They certainly are not banned here. So to show that they really are not dangerous if they're used properly, konjac supplements are still allowed in Australia, just not the noodles. So I don't pretend to understand how they come up with the rules they come up with, but there are days in my life when I think we should take all the warning labels off of products and just let natural selection do its job. But I wouldn't feel that way if it was someone that I loved making silly choices, I guess. Okay, those are just bubbling away very gently. I'm going to turn it down to 1 because I just want this on a gentle simmer. Now I'm going to hold these right up where you can see them. I'm not going to open these right now because I'm not going to be eating these right away, and they will dry out. Now in this package you can see that it's spaghetti noodles. It looks just like spaghetti noodles. They have a little bit of a different toothiness to them, so it's very much like an al dente noodle. You do not have to cook these. Open this packet and put it in some kind of a strainer and rinse it off with hot water, and they're ready to eat. Don't eat them by themselves. Yeah, that still just makes me a little bit crazy. Now you'll know when your sauce starts to thicken up, and it's going to reduce a fair bit. It will probably reduce by about half. Maybe not quite half, but it's going to reduce a lot. Now this is definitely cooked enough that we can do a taste test. Make sure we've got enough lime juice in here. However limey you like it, make it that way. You know, this is a meal that you're making for yourself and your family. It needs to be you that appreciates the flavor profiles in it, not me. That is wonderful. But I do think that I want a little more lime juice in it. So we are just going to add about another, this is a 1/4 cup measure. I'm going to put it about half full, so about another 1/8 of a cup. And then we will do another taste test, make sure that we're getting it where we want it. Okay. Now we'll see if this is good enough. Yep, that's what it needed. Now if you were here and you could taste this right now, you would notice that there's a little bit of graininess in here, and that's because it's not cooked enough that the Parmesan cheese has melted yet. Once the Parmesan cheese melts, that graininess will be gone. If you're using Parmesan petals or freshly grated parm that you've just done yourself, you're not going to find that grittiness. You're going to find the chunks of cheese instead. But this will melt down just exactly the same as parm petals would. So this is going to be amazing. And it is already 10:35. Now I am going to take one of these wee little guys out of here, and we are going to do check and make sure that it's cooked all the way through, and then do a taste test on that as well. Now chicken is one of those things where you don't want even medium. You want to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. Oh, and this is cooked through beautifully, you can see. So let's see how it tastes. Yep, we did a good job. You don't taste the pork rinds any more than you would taste breadcrumbs. It just is being used with the egg as a binder, and that is absolutely delicious. So put this over the konjac noodles once they've been rinsed with hot water, and you add a few meatballs and some of this beautiful creamy sauce that will be done later. I will take a picture of this when I have a plate full of it with the cream sauce so that you can see it. So watch this Shining Life and the support group, because I'll make sure the picture is up in both. I hope all of you have an amazing day and an amazing weekend. And I will see you all here 10 o'clock Sunday morning Mountain. 10 o'clock Mountain? Yep, that's where we are. Do your very best to live your best version of this Shining Life. That's what I'm going to do. And I hope you will too. I will see you all Sunday morning. Bye for now.